Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the stream. I hope you're having a good Sunday. How's it going? Let's see. Right, this one seems fine. Oh, I forgot my holder for Apple Pencil. I'll be back in a second. And I'm back. Good morning, Solarfun. How are you doing? Hey, Schmilicopter. You're here as well. Nice. How are you doing? Getting in your Christmas mood? Putting your ho 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 on, whatever it means. I think I've seen a t-shirt somewhere like that. Anyway, I think last time we discussed the possibility of talking about perspective drawing. And you know, hey Nervin, welcome to the stream. And the first thing that comes to mind is 1-point perspective. So I thought maybe we can explore 1-point perspective a little bit, figure out how it's done. I mean, probably everybody already knows, but let's see. And then, yeah, if we'll have time, we will also draw some thumbnails and some ideas with 1-point perspective. And if we have time, maybe we'll also finish one of the thumbnails. But let's see how it's going. First of all, what is perspective? That's a great question, to which I don't really know the answer to. Nervin asks, how are you doing, guys? That's a great question as well. I'm doing good. I'm curious of what will come out of this perspective stuff. How are you doing? That's the question. And are you gonna draw something along? So usually, first of all, the thing to do is to find the horizon line, because everything goes into horizon. But before that, I usually like to draw the picture frame, because what this helps to do is, if you're drawing stuff and then you realize that like your composition is missing, like, I don't know, maybe a little bit on the side, then you can just extend it and then blow it up, and then you'll have kind of more control over your composition. That's why I like to draw the picture frame first. Schmelicopter says, just finished a big project and now I want to draw something for myself, but not sure if I can. Too tired to of drawing, actually. Whoa, that's new. So much drawing. Did you finish the other second book that you were working on? Nervin says, I'm ready to draw something. The last 3 pages of my sketchbook want to be filled. You should make a sketchbook tour. That's a good idea. Why not? So when we have our picture plane, this is basically like a frame that fits in the camera. Then we want to place our horizon line. For now, it doesn't really matter where we place it, but let's say we place it here. And the cool thing about a horizon line is that it's always on the eye level of the viewer. So let's say if you're like, it doesn't matter how tall you are, how small you are, like your eyes will always be on the horizon line. But other people and objects, they will differentiate depending on your size. They will be bigger or smaller or whatnot. But now we need to place a vanishing point. A vanishing point is the point where all the parallel lines converge towards. And this point is placed somewhere on the horizon line. When you're coming up with stuff you draw, it kind of doesn't matter where you place it. It's up to your artistic interpretation where you want the focus point of the picture be. But with the simplest perspective, we only have one vanishing point. That's why it's called one-point perspective. When you found the vanishing point, the next step you do is just, well, now let's start differently. You can make a grid with lines coming through the vanishing point that will help you align stuff, but this is the next step. First, to understand the perspective, you need to understand that if you place something, maybe like a, I don't know, a stick in space, or let's put a cube. Let's say there is this one side, one corner of the cube, and all the parallel lines of the how to describe it? So basically, the to figure out how this cube will look in perspective, you need to find the corners, and from there you put the lines through the vanishing point, and these 2 lines basically will determine how something of this size will look further in the perspective or closer to you. So basically, when it gets closer, it gets bigger. When it gets further, it gets smaller. Makes sense, right? Besides that, all the other lines, if you're looking at the object right in front of you, like a cube object, all the vertical and horizontal lines will be parallel to horizon and basically like straight vertically, but all the kind of depth will converge into the vanishing point. Does this make any sense so far? I'm not sure. I think it should make some sense. draw this actually on the different layer. Helicopter says yes. I know you said it a long time ago, but I will use it for this question. So yes, this makes sense. Okay. Next. What's important to know about perspective? What else? The other thing that's important to know is that your horizon line, it's as we know, it's your eye level. So if you put it higher or lower, it will determine how close you are to the ground. So for example, if you place your horizon line really high, let's say somewhere here, then this camera will be kind of like looking down on the ground. So you can have like a road here and then like sides of the buildings maybe. That could be the case. And if you place your horizon line very low, then you will have more sky and it will look like as if you're looking kind of up into the sky. And if you have buildings, you will have them here as well, like sticking out. That's the general gist. So placement of your horizon line, placement of your vanishing point, both of those things is your personal choice if you're coming up with stuff from your head. The other, I think, very useful thing to learn how to do is constructing shapes in the perspective. So let's say you have a square. I think I explained it a few times before, but if you want to, let's say it's a square in 2D view. So there is no perspective, nothing. If you want to draw the same square again, let's say you have, I don't know, maybe you have like a railing. So you have something like here, and then there is a rail on top, and you want to draw these like blobs of, I don't know, stone or wood, like these railing things, and you don't know how they will, like how to space them evenly. So when you figure out your first one, you can kind of copy the rest to do that. In your like a four angled rectangle, you connect the opposite angles, not as wobbly as I do it, preferably. But then you have the intersection of them, which is the middle of the rectangle. And then you can put a line that will go to vanishing point, or in this case it will be parallel to the sides. And through this point that you discovered, let's mark it this one. This will be the middle of the side, and from the opposite corner, doesn't matter which one, upper or lower, you put a line through, you find where this line intersects with one of the extended sides, and you put a parallel line there. And then you can keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. Whoops. And that's how you figure out it in 2D. But the same thing works in 3D. So for example, if you have your railings here, is this color even recognizable on the screen? Let's make it bright blue. So if you have your railings here, let's say, and then you know that you want them to go this way, so they will go into the vanishing point, but you don't know how to make them evenly spaced. Then you do the same. You figure out the first one. Let's say it's going to be here, and then opposite corners. Let's pick this one again. Opposite corners connected. Then we have this dot in the middle, and then this you connect this middle point with the vanishing point. And then you have this line that cuts it in the middle, and you just transfer this further vertically up. Can I also make a triangle in perspective this way with the vanishing point and all? You can, but I would recommend starting out with a square. So if you want to have a triangle, put a square around it. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of triangle you wanted, but squares are much easier to put in the perspective. For example, this one, you can say, okay, this will go to the vanishing point, this is my square, and if you know, like, this triangle, for example, is in the middle, then you can find the middle again, and this will be your triangle. Triangles are tricky because 10 boxes already. Oh wow. Triangles are a little bit tricky because especially these kind of triangles, whatever they're called, the even sided triangles, because their middle point is kind of not really in the middle if you think about it. Like, if you look on the horizontal scale, one part will be bigger than the other, and that's why the ellipses also kind of get smaller, but we'll get to them in a second. So with the square, I think it's kind of easy, right? And then you can put any shape in the square, and if you know how to construct the square, you know how to construct the shape in the square. So that's for the railing. What else can we explore here? Ellipses. Let's talk about ellipses for a second. Or, as they're known in the 2D world, circles? Circles are easier to understand than ellipses. So if you have a circle, let's put a circle here. Whoop, Jesus. Okay, let's say you have a circle. This circle will touch the center line, the center points of the sides of the square drawn around this circle. This is important to know, and we know how to find the center points with this connecting the diagonals method. So we know the center point, and this square will help us place the ellipse in the perspective. So you do the same with every shape, right? Like you have this circle in the square. That means you just need to place the square in perspective somewhere. Let's put it here. So we have one side of our square. These sides will go into the vanishing point. Then what do we do? Then yeah, we can just kind of, depending on how big you want your circle to be, you can decide how it will, like how squished it will be. But when you have your plane in place, then you need to find the center again. This line will be parallel to the horizon. This line will go into the vanishing point. So we have our middle points, and as we know, when you draw a circle, it has to touch all the sides of the encompassing square. You can also try to note sorry, you can Jesus Christ, what's going on there? Let's get a sip of coffee. Sorry about this. Anyway, you can also note where these circle lines cross the diagonal lines. If you see, it's kind of like a third way into the second half or something like that, just kind of for your reference, because it's easy to make it too big and then it's kind of like a rounded square, or it's easy to make it too small and then it's more like a diamond shape. So keeping all those things in mind, you just try to connect the dots in perspective. So you go here, you go there, you connect this one, connect this one, and then you're trying to make it more kind of natural looking. So it's just a matter of making sure there are no no sharp corners. Because there are no sharp corners in the circle. So something like this, and then you can extend it further, figure out the placement of the next one. Maybe we'll skip one, and then here you'll have the same thing. Connect the sides, connect the whatever they're called, corners. And then draw the ellipse. So this is kind of like the gist, the general idea, and if you analyze this further, you will realize that the further the circle goes away from the horizon line, the more round it becomes, and the closer it gets to the horizon line, the more flat it becomes. And it works in both directions. So the same goes in the other direction. Now, knowing this part, how to divide stuff in perspective, is also helpful if you want to have something symmetrical. And it's not always easy. For example, if you have a house door. Let's say you have like a little roof and then 2 columns and then like a staircase in front. And there is a door somewhere. So from the side you will see like the columns, maybe the railing here, the staircase, the roof. And maybe you want to put it in the perspective. Oh, Jesus, I get notifications that I'm live. That's good to know, I guess. So, let's say we want to draw this house front in the perspective. We'll place a vertical line somewhere where we want to have it. We'll connect it to the vanishing point. Also, we'll probably make the horizon line a little bit less visible. Yeah, so then you say you can kind of estimate just half of it, and let's say, okay, there will be like stairs here and then like another pylon somewhere further. But to that you can say, okay, I want to have it like this big maybe. Then you connect the dots again and you make it taller. You find the middle of the roof. That's where the triangles come to play, Nervin. You made a triangle. That's the spirit. This stuff will be parallel to the horizon. So let's say you have this house here. It's a little flat, doesn't matter, but you want to have a house next to it, but not like right next to it, you know. You don't want them to be like this, but you want to skip like maybe there is a street and you want to have exactly the same house next. So to do that you kind of can use the same method but with an offset. So let's say if you look from front, this is your house, then you want to have a street, and then you want to have another house here. So to do that you kind of do the same as with copying, but instead of copying like this rectangle here, which you need to copy, the kind of axis along which you will copy needs to be in the middle of your empty space between the object. So if you have object A and object B, your symmetry line or your mirror line will be in the middle of empty space between them. And if you want them to be stacked, then it just happens to be that this mirror plane is in the middle of 0 centimeters in between. So it's the same principle, just they're too close. So here, let's say we want the street to be maybe like, I don't know, this would be the street. It's also kind of our artistic choice. And then to construct this properly, we take this house, we do the same thing, find the middle of it, put the line through it, but instead of treating this house as the thing that we copy, we will treat the house and half of our empty space as the thing we copy along this axis. Does it make a sense? A sense or the sense? Some sense? So when you have this, you copy the whole thing, you have already the middle point, opposite corner through the thing, boom. This is one side of it. Then we need to find, like, we need to kind of detach from this whole square. We need to detach part that will be empty. So we just copy this part along the same axis. From this corner we put the line down, put it vertically, boom, there is the house number 2. You can then find the middle point, vertical, put this through, there you go. So you copied a house, but not right next to it, a little bit further away, and we can use it in one point perspective as well. Same principles converging into vanishing point. So what else? I think the last thing I want to mention is with ellipses. When you're drawing ellipses, they're the trickiest ones, I think. But good rule of thumb to remember is that when you have an ellipse, whoa, when you have an ellipse, it has a long axis and a short axis. Oh, so it's called major axis and minor axis. And the minor axis, it's like very good trick to remember to check your perspective on ellipses, because they're such a pain in the butt in the beginning. The minor axis will always be pointing towards the vanishing point. And what else? That's it, I think. Is it? Yeah. So the minor axis of an ellipse always points to the vanishing point, and the rest, I think, is easy enough. All right. Did that help? Did that make any sense? Should we stop this nonsense and go into drawing thumbnails, or is there anything else that needs to be addressed? I guess the other thing we can talk a little bit about is composition, drawing. Alright, then let's get into drawing and then figure out the composition later. I'm thinking how to proceed with drawing. Let's do maybe some thumbnails first. Doesn't have to be in one point perspective. I can explain while drawing. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Stop mumbling, start drawing. I get it. So let's do some thumbnails. Let's do 4. Think I'll try to come up with few different things you can do with one point perspective, and if it's interesting or it helps to understand this thing, we can also do like a 2-point perspective next time. 3-point perspective after that, then maybe like 4-point perspective. So when you're doodling around, one important thing to keep in mind is the horizon line placement, because based on that you can include either more details of the ground or more details of the sky. So we can try out different perspective horizon line placements. Generally speaking, everybody usually says don't place your horizon line in the middle because it just looks unnatural and stiff. Asymmetry is what makes the composition interesting and dynamic, I think. You can have a static composition that is also beautiful, but it often happens to be not intentional. If you're trying to come up with a very static composition intentionally, then you can of course like put the horizon line in the middle, like make it very symmetrical and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what we're doing right now. Let's see, how can we use 1-point perspective? We can use it on different scales. So let's see, maybe like a landscape first. Let's put a vanishing point somewhere there. Create some helping guidelines for ourselves. Nowadays, you know, with Procreate and Photoshop, you can just have perspective grid made for you, which is super useful, of course. But I remember before it was much more easy to just make a brush that has million of these lines intersecting, because that's kind of what one vanishing point is. And then you just take this thing and place it wherever you need and make it bigger, and then you have your helping guides for vanishing point. But you can also just, if it's a thumbnail, you can just do it by hand. And the more you do it by hand, the easier it gets, I guess. Okay, let's start thinking. What can we do here with the landscape? Maybe there is like some massive object here. Let's also try out a new approach by using bigger brush. So there can be like a big object here. So maybe something here. With landscape, with natural shapes like hills and all that, it's kind of hard, for me at least, to use perspective because everything is so flowy. So you don't really see those converging lines. But even with that, it still helps, because if you have, like, let's say you can have a road here that leads somewhere in, and this road will need to converge as well. So that would be one of the ways. It becomes trickier when you're trying to put things that are not aligned to, like they are not 90 degrees and are not aligned to the horizon line. But I don't like this road, by the way. Let's just try to make some very light heels somewhere. That's a very simple landscape. Let's pick a little darker color, maybe add some mountains or hills here. With this horizon line placement, so we know that it's a little bit higher, that means we're looking kind of a little bit down, which means we will see more stuff sticking up over horizon line. Maybe there are cliffs of some sorts. And there is like a river. And maybe then there are hills further down. Something like this. Then we need, so we have kind of middle ground and the background, and we need foreground to make it complete, which usually means just adding some darker shapes in the front. The closer it gets to you, the more contrast it has, so it's going to be darker and brighter at the same time. And it's also a good thing to keep in mind, for example, if you look at these at these cliffs here, let's say this is the cliff, then the closer it gets, the bigger it will be, and we know, like, we have this line here, so if we want this thing in the foreground be as tall as cliffs further, so it doesn't look weird, we'll need to kind of extend it up until this line, which of course is kind of obvious, but it's easy to forget as well. So we have some cliffs, some stones in the water, and there are some hills that also go in that river. Here, for example, we see that like this is not bad composition, but maybe it needs some extra stuff on the sides. Let's just not be ashamed of expanding it, because maybe there is more interesting stuff behind the corner of the page that we just don't know yet. The other little, not really trick, but thing to keep in mind, or useful way to make depth, is when you have something on the background. Let's say we have these hills and they blend with the midground, but we need to push them further. To do that, you can just pick the color of the sky and it will give you the atmospheric perspective. So you pick the color of the sky, you tone down the opacity, and you know, doesn't matter where, like to 20%, and then you just go over those hills with this, and you get these lovely distant hills. You can also make it a little bit brighter, some of them, if they're even further. Something like this. Let's make these guys a little bit more transparent. And these horizon lines, or these lines to the vanishing point, can at least help us guide the edges of the cliffs a little bit more. So for example, we know that like if there is a hard edge cliff, we'll go this way. If there is a cliff edge at the bottom, it will also follow these lines. Then we can add some darker stuff, maybe also with this rough brush. The next thing we'll need to figure out probably is where does the light come from. And also the thing with rivers and water in general is that it is generally the same color as the sky. So we can add some of this blue color to the water to make it a little bit more watery. Let's make this a little bit darker. We can say that the sun is shining from the from like a right top right side somewhere, so we will know that like this stuff will be darker because it's in the shadow. We also know this stuff will be in the shadow because the sun is behind this. And the bottom part of this will be, I guess, darker. The backside, like all the crevices, and it doesn't matter that it looks kind of streaky right now because it's just a thumbnail. You can also make this part a little lighter. Add some light to the mountains as well, to the cliffs. Even this dark cliff will also have some light spots, I guess. Also, the water, of course, needs to be a little darker on this side because there is shadow from the cliffs. So we have thumbnail number 1 with like a, I don't know, kind of like a fantasy, not fantasy, just landscape, I guess. And now when you see that you actually would like to have a little bit more sky, you can always just take this thing, no, just remove the frame and kind of reframe your image. Just add some more sky on top. You don't want like the sides of the picture have the same black mass, so we'll think about it later maybe if we pick this one. But for now, let's do another one. Let's say, looks like a canyon. Nice. That's exactly what I was going for. It is indeed a canyon. We can also make the sky a little bit darker at the top, just to add some variation to the sky a bit. This contrast of light and dark, depending on what you do with it, can also help to kind of set the focus of the image. So for example, if we have very, I guess, sunset there or something that we want to highlight, we can add some brightness to the sky as well, close to the point where we want it to be. Or if we want to have this mountain sticking out. Something like this. Alright, I have a canyon sketch. Let's darken this a little bit though and move on to the next one. All right, next, let's say we're doing maybe like a street view. Let's pick some different colors. So let's say we have a street view of maybe just a street. Let's start with a simple idea. Just find vanishing point first. Check that we're on the right layer. Pick any vanishing point. Maybe this horizon line is 2 in the middle. Let's remove the horizon lines, by the way. So here, let's say it's like kind of more or less in the middle, maybe a little lower, because we're kind of gonna be looking up. Let's pick a vanishing point. If you pick it in the middle, it will, depending on what you draw, it's usually more static because it's all like all the lines will be converging to the middle. So it's better to pick something a little bit off center. You can use all these, you know, fancy golden ratio things to find out where your composition point should be, but let's not get too much carried away. Let's carry on. That's a different thing. So let's just add some lines to help us. And now we can just start blocking in some shapes. So let's say we're on the street. This is our eye level. So maybe it's not a very wide street. Maybe like this would be the street. Just put some vertical lines for the houses. Nope. Is this vertical? Let's say yes. Let's make one building maybe like very narrow. And add like a little alleyway here. So the next building is maybe a little bit inwards. The problem with one point perspective is that the further you get to the sides, the more distortion you will get. So the houses that are like here, they will have very weird angles in the corners. So you kind of want to keep it more or less close to the, like the composition should be more or less close to the vanishing point, and that's why you sometimes need to make shapes a little bit bigger. just extend this house. Maybe this house is like here. Just trying to plan the city a little bit, or at least this street. Like this angle is kind of too steep for like it's too sharp, so it's a little bit doesn't look like a real house if the angles are too sharp. So let's just maybe let's keep this one low. The other useful thing with ellipses and all that and perspective is when you're, for example, doing if you want to have an archway, you can put like basically the arch is half of a circle in the square or in rectangle, and you know that circle touches sides of a square, so you can use this to make this arch, which means you just need to find the center point, just like always, put the vertical line, and then you have this point to which you would need to reach with this archway. And this way you kind of get the realistic archway ish. You just need to be sure that these points are in the correct place. Let's make this a little smaller so we don't have this huge line in the middle. And instead of that, we can just add some more houses there maybe. They can be also just little cubes for now. Let's have this house a little bit of a roof as well. Uh-oh. I started my 1-point perspective exercises in your Telegram channel if you want to see. I do want to see as soon as I connect my iPad back. I think we lost me. Let's see. 1-point perspective studies. It's a pyramid. With pyramids, it's well, actually, this one is correct. Like wait. Can I just drag it here? Copy. Paste. First of all, nice studies, good job. Let's see. So these things, they go into the vanishing point, that's what I mean. Like if stuff is going too far away from the vanishing point, like these angles, they just look wrong, but they're correct. It's just weird. But with the pyramid, as you know, the pyramid is like a square with a pointy thing. That's the way I describe pyramids. But so here you would have, this will be your rectangle, but you want, actually you want a cube, right? Or at least a box, because you need to know this height. So instead of kind of figuring out the height, I think maybe that's what you did, but you just again find the middle point, because you know this point is in the middle, and then from that point you put a vertical line as tall as you want, and then you just connect the dots. And that's, I think that's what you did. It just looks weird, like this angle, because it's far from the vanishing point, but you can't really avoid it in one point perspective, I think, or it's kind of hard to avoid. Anyway, we'll have some houses here. We can put some houses in the background as well. Let's try to draw it with some color. Which palettes do I have? Let's say we just pick this simple watercolor palette. Let's do the midground first. So again, where's the palette? There it is. Again, we'll pick the lightest colors for the background. And then maybe another layer for the sky. There are these houses in the further back that will also have some atmospheric perspective. And then the closer things will be darker. And we can make the composition more interesting when we add some more details. And other blobs. That's pretty. What's pretty? You can maybe indicate some shapes here, like windows or doors. Maybe there's some windows there. Some windows here. And again, if you think that your eye level is on the horizon line, then it can also help you understand where the doors should be. So if this is a horizon line, yeah, if this is a horizon line and this is your eye level, then first of all, hi, thanks for following, Cooler Kiddo. Oh, the thumbnail is pretty. Thank you. Anyway, if this is your eye level, that means your head is on this level, right? Because, I mean, unless you have eyes in a different place than head, then, you know, usually you have your head here. So you can kind of estimate the height of a person with this. And that means that when people are getting further, oh, that looks very inappropriate. Sorry about that. That also doesn't look great. Shit. Let's just, yeah, nice. That means if people are getting further away to the vanishing point, their eyes stay on the same level. So the head is getting smaller, the body is getting smaller, but the head is in the same place. And that's really amazing because it really helps to make humans all the same size when they're moving through the city. And if we go back to this thumbnail, we can kind of do the same. So we can say, let's do another layer just in case. So humans who are walking back and forth, they will have, if we assume that this is eye level, which is not the case because we're kind of looking a little bit down, so we're a little bit higher. So we can say the doors, which are a little bit higher than us usually, are as tall as the horizon line. And that can help you really keep the scale of the thing, because if you have a point of reference like doors, windows, human shapes, then it's kind of easier to, it will just look more realistic, I think, more believable. Not necessarily realistic, but believable, because the shapes have logic. And if we want to add humans here, which we might do, we can say, okay, humans are a little bit lower than the horizon line because they need to fit in the doors. So if this is our human, we can kind of translate it into perspective. So the same human walking further will be like this size. And then we can also put horizontal lines kind of to figure out the scale of those humans in other places. So this will be here. This guy, if he is walking in the middle of the road, he will be like here. And then maybe there is someone here talking to someone else. Maybe there is another person walking a little bit further there. I'm trying to like add more humans and learn how to add humans to stuff, because I think otherwise the cities usually look quite empty. But this is a good start, I think. I can remove some of these unnecessary lines just to make it a little cleaner. And then with humans we can also lock the layer and make them a little bit brighter at the further side, because they also need atmospheric perspective. Right, let's blend them a little bit. Maybe we can add some brighter colors. To the sky, to the buildings, especially those further away. Maybe we can introduce even some sunlight. Doesn't have to go all the way, because you know there are buildings that are blocking it maybe. And of course the closer stuff is to you, the more contrast it will have. So all this sun and shadows, they will be much more pronounced. Add some more houses and shapes there in the background. Maybe some of them are just parallel to the, or yeah, frontal view towards the camera, so they're just flat. And we can also add some flat stuff here. Also the ground will be brighter because there is sun shining on it. And maybe it's gonna be, since the sun is actually not shining on some parts, maybe it's gonna be like bright but not sun colored. Alright, I think maybe we're also done with this one. I'm struggling. Is there a way to construct the correct depth of cube when drawing in perspective? So if you want to, it's a little tricky one. Let's see. Let's see if I remember it. Color, stop it. Can you just go away? No? Maybe, please? No, okay. Now I have colors here forever. But let's construct some stuff. So if you have a horizon line, let's just create a new layer. Let's say you have a horizon line, you have a vanishing point, you have like in one point perspective, your vertical lines and your horizontal lines are not distorted, right? Because they're parallel to the horizon line and they're perpendicular to the horizon line, both of them. So the only thing that changes is the depth, right? And to do that, we can, let's say you want the cube to be this wide. You can measure the tallness of it, of course, but if you want to if you want to have the same distance from here to here or to here, wherever it is, you know what helps? Circles. Because circles are magical. They have a radius and it's the same in all directions. So if you have a square, like if you really have a square, then as mentioned before, the circle will touch every side in the middle, and that means this radius, which is the same everywhere, is basically like the diameter is the length of your cube side. So all you need to do is draw a, how we put it, okay, if you know this part, then you can see, okay, to like if, yeah, right. Let's roll back a little bit. You have the radius, right? And the radius is your cube side. So it will be radius in all directions, because here is the radius, here is the radius, and this will be your cube. That means if you have only one side, you need to construct a kind of 4 squares around it theoretically, and then draw a circle and kind of like place this dot on this line. Does that make sense? Let's try it out again. No, let's actually just pick this color and delete all this stuff. So let's say you have this vanishing point here. You know your height of the cube or the length. Let's say you have only the height, because the height, even in 2-point perspective, the height is also unchanging. So you have this thing, the height. You can like put first all the lines to the vanishing point, parallel lines to the thing, all that kind of stuff. Then you know that you need to build a square around this thing, right? How do you do it then? Circles. Wait a second. But how do you do the circles? From this point you need to have like the same distance here and there. I got stuck because I mean, you can figure out the middle point of this. No, wait. You double this thing down or up, probably down, which we know how to do. You just need like any rectangle, divide it in half, draw the horizontal line down, this thing, so you have like the double the length down, right? That stuff you can do. Then you have double the side. You can do the same sideways. Like you can just draw a circle now with the center in this point and with the radius of your side. You probably could have done it before, but with the second point it's a little bit easier, and this helps you to find the third point. So now you have this side. But what you know what you know? That this is the center of your sphere that's sitting inside the cube. So we can find the same distance here. We know that this goes here and this goes here, and we know that there should be a circle in the middle, because this is how you rotate this line into perspective, right? Like you want to place this thing in there, kind of, or this thing in there. But to do that you need a circle, and you know the circle, like you have the diameter of the circle, you have the center, you have the minor axis that always points in the direction of the vanishing point, and you have major axis that is always parallel to the wait, is it perpendicular? Yeah, but you know for sure that this circle will have to touch these points. So just draw the circle, and yeah, basically you need to make sure that your major axis of your circle is perpendicular to your minor axis. Minor axis is pointing in the direction of vanishing point, so major axis will be perpendicular, and with these points you can already guess the shape of this circle. And the circle will intersect the line in basically in the same radius as the other thing. So if you draw on top of it, you will have your perfect cube. And then you just need a vertical line from there and a horizontal line from there. Does this make sense? Maybe it will be easier to do in 2-point perspective. But kinda makes sense, I think. Did it help Solar Fun? Or is it more confusing? It's a little tricky. It's a lot of geometry, kind of. Like basically, if you know one side, you need to construct the same side the other way, and then also all other sides, and then you have thing going to vanishing point, and then you have a perpendicular major axis. And with these points you can construct a circle. From circle you can construct a sphere using these guidelines for vanishing points. Wait. And then you have a cube. We'll have to digest. Yeah, we'll give it another shot in the in 2-point perspective. I think there it will make more sense. Alright, so we have a couple of thumbnails. Let's do a couple more maybe. Let's try to do like a dynamic perspective. I mean, the perspective will be the same. The composition will be dynamic. Because we don't have to place the horizon line horizontally. We can tilt it a little bit, and it will make our composition much more dynamic. just add some helpful guidelines. There is a different approach. I mean, there are a million approaches to drawing, of course, but I think one of the more fun approaches is to first blob the shapes that you want to draw, or like that you want to have there, and then you put like figure out the horizon line where you want your vanishing point, and then kind of just fix all your mistakes. But this time we're more focused on the perspective. So alright, we have maybe 20 minutes left. Let's do a couple more thumbnails. This one, we already have like a landscape, a city. Maybe this one can be like maybe like a road. Maybe a railroad with a train. I'm just thinking out loud here. It could be like a bunch of clouds sticking out of this train. Maybe it has like the thing has a curve here. The tracks. Alright, that's a train, but we need some more stuff. Maybe there is like a maybe it's coming out of a tunnel. Or maybe it's coming out of the depot, or like an, I don't know, some place. Maybe there is like mountains here or something like that, and there is like a big tunnel. These guys will also stack up into perspective. These guys will also go into perspective, so you will know where to place the support. Maybe the train should be bigger, otherwise it's kind of small and too tiny for this huge tunnel. Something like this maybe is better. Here could be like maybe some poles standing, like these posts or something, just to have some composition here, I guess. Maybe there's like a platform here. Trying to keep stuff parallel to the horizon line doesn't always work out. let's do it again. Maybe pick some brighter color for sky. Let's first put this color on everything actually. All right. Let's see. Let's add some, again, the same stuff. Darker, brighter colors. Like, for example, this time the depth of the tunnel will be the darkest, I guess. Maybe we'll put this layer in the multiply. And the train itself, I guess, will be also very dark. Oh, oops, picked the wrong color. Did you know if you hold and press long in Procreate on the color, you pick the previous color? It's very convenient if you accidentally pick the color, like I always do. I mean, it's probably irrelevant for people who don't use Procreate, but a lot of people use Procreate these days, so maybe you didn't know. So we'll have something like this. Maybe there is a part of the house here, of the station. Let's make it a little darker there. Maybe a little bit darker here as well. This is slowly turning into a ASMR video. Proper ASMR. Let's just make a little bit less less weird, less wobbly. You know, there are these kind of constructions sometimes, like I don't know what they're called. What are they for even? I used to think that they're to put sand in the train, but why would you put sand in the train? Like, I don't know why I thought it's for sand. Who puts sand in trains? Is it even a thing? Maybe the train can be like bright red actually. Just some indication of color. Maybe the heels also would have some greenish color indication. This is more like a value study thumbnail, which I really enjoy doing because they help me focus more on the composition and like the overall look rather than on details and stuff like that, because you can add colors and contrast later, but it's much easier, at least for me, to see where I'm lacking the color or lacking the contrast if I just do it more like a value composition. There is something to be said though about grayscale, because different colors in grayscale behave differently. So like if you're drawing something and you have dark gray, you can't tell if it should be like if it's supposed to be green or red when it's colored, and because of the difference how different colors translate into black and white, it's kind of easy to make mistakes. Maybe there'll be like white smoke actually coming out. Alright, and then some darker color on this side. Alright, very dynamic composition. I think we can squish it a little bit in. It's the last picture someone took while falling off the platform in front of the train, I think, based on the positioning of the camera. Maybe let's make it a little bit neater. That would do. Maybe we'll stretch it a little bit. Or not. Alright, let's see the last thing real quick. Let's see how we can apply one-point perspective into interiors. You can use one-point perspective even for stuff like for smaller objects, even for stuff that's just laying on the table, but because usually you look at the table like this, that's how I draw humans. So you look at the table like this, and because of that your horizon line is very up high. That's why if you're drawing something on the table, you would need to move your horizon line very far away. Like if this is the picture plane, you have a horizon line very far, and then you can draw these lines and then put some stuff on the table, like, I don't know, maybe a mug or something. Yeah, something like this, and the rest stuff as well. And if you put your horizon line and the vanishing point out of the picture plane kind of far, then you also have less problems with things having too big of a difference, or like too big of a change between one side and the other side, because here is everything is kind of nearby. But that's not what I wanted to do. Hey, there it is. I wanted to look into possibilities for interiors. So with interior, if you think about having a back wall, like if you're looking inside the room. Wait, why is this doesn't get smaller? There we go. So you have a back wall that you're looking at. And if you think about horizon line, as I said again before, if your horizon line is on your eyesight level, then if your room is, let's say, 2 something meters high, then maybe you will be like this big, and not this big. If that's you, then the horizon line will be somewhere here. Vanishing point, again, do what you want with it. Put it in the middle, put it on the side. I don't care. It's artistic choice. And then from there you connect these corners. Oop. Oop. Whoops. Come on. Alright, let's cheat a little bit and use the Procreate Make My Lines Straighter tool. So you have the back wall, you have this human. Human actually is kind of useful. You can put the human in the middle. And then you can also duplicate the human and place the human maybe here next to the corner. This will be a human who's standing next to the wall. This way you keep the proportions of the humans the same. So now when we have these rough guidelines for the perspective here, we can add some more lines just to help us plan the layout a little bit better. But then we can construct the interior, and that's super fun actually, because you know that like you already have the guides, so everything will follow for like every parallel line that is not parallel to the horizon line or is not vertical will go in the direction of the vanishing point. So we can start with vertical lines. Let's say there is like a column or something here. This will be our roof, or like the upper side, upper limit. And maybe there is like a doorway here. Maybe it's actually open. Then we can extend this a little bit, extend this here as well. Maybe there is a wall here. Maybe that's the back side of the room actually. But we can have this column here be like a big supporting thing. So it's actually in the middle of the empty room. Then you can say, okay, these humans here, that's how tall the human is. So the table will be like maybe in the middle, or nah, it's actually lower, so like here maybe. Then you can place a long table here. Okay. Something like this. You can cut a window here. Just make sure to follow the same vanishing points. Something like this. Maybe there are more windows in the back there. Maybe there is, I don't know, something here, like a shelf. And some more cubes of some sorts. First, I think it's sometimes, oh no, iPad lost connection. Thanks SolarFun for keeping an eye on the stream. Let's try this again. Nice. So in the beginning, it's kind of nice to just put some blobs, like some blocks, some cubes and cylinders and stuff like that, just to block out the composition, and then you can add more details. For example, maybe like here will be another beam which goes like here, just to have some sort of frame for the composition, I guess. And there could be more storage compartments, or maybe like a bench here or something like that. It's kind of easier to brainstorm with blobs rather than specific things. Maybe there is like a carpet here. Let's add some color to it as well. Okay, so first of all, let's just lock out very basic mid-range color, not too bright, not too dark, so we can go both ways. And then let's maybe pick some darker stuff and work on this. In the indoor environment, you wouldn't usually see that much of atmospheric perspective because the distances are not that large. You can have atmospheric perspective to kind of highlight how deep the hole is, if it's like, I don't know, a royal hall in the cathedral or something like that. Then it would be quite nice to use atmospheric perspective, but here you can more or less keep the values roughly the same. Some things you can just make whatever color you want to help your composition. So since you're an artist, you're in control of everything, and if you decide that, like for example, if this guy has dark silhouette for whatever reason, I might want to add like a secondary source of light behind him, so it's highlighting him a little bit more, something like that. But for now, I'll just do it to the windows. So something like this might be a start of an interior. Depending on what light do you have in your composition, it will also change the how the ceiling is lit. I think I'll just highlight these beams a little bit more, because they probably would be very dark if it's old wood. Also, this space underneath the table will be dark because there is no light. Maybe this part is darker because there is no light from the windows. You can also take soft brush and do a little bit of more soft lighting, or darkening rather, in my case. So something like this can be a decent start, I guess, for the 1-point perspective interior. From here you can kind of take it anywhere you want, but I think we covered some different use cases, and I think it's time to wrap up the stream. So these quick thumbnails were just an exploration of the 1-point perspective, and we maybe will dive in 2-point perspective next time. We'll see. Nervan says, I think the interior is my favorite. I like the interior the most as well. I think it's kind of simple but nice lighting. Like, it has character in the lighting. Let's see if I will take any of those further, or if we do if we'll do next stream, let me know. But we will go to 20-point perspective eventually. It's just the beginning. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed or followed or whatnot, check out those amazing links everywhere. Join our Discord, share your art, do all the good stuff. And yeah, thanks for joining. I hope you learned something or entertained. Oh, I learned a lot, says SolarFun. Great. Then maybe we'll continue with this deep dive into some topics, because I also enjoyed it a lot. Anyway, have a good Sunday, have a nice week, and I see you all next time.